Congressman and Democratic candidate for president Dean Phillips exploded on mainstream journalists while in New Hampshire this week, saying Donald Trump is the only politician listening to Americans right now.
I've said this 18,000 times. I'm only doing this to defeat Donald Trump. Nobody seems to want to do that in the Democratic Party right now other than me, because Joe Biden can't, is my proposition, because the data says he can't. No one in the country right now cares. In fact, most of the people in the country are going to the Trump rally right now because he's listening to them. No one's asking about this stuff. I'm just frustrated. I hope you understand why I'm getting tired of it. You're doing your jobs, but you're not asking the questions that Americans give a shit about.
Now, in case you forgot, President Joe Biden will not appear on the Granite State's ballot today after he pushed the DNC to move the party's first primary to South Carolina. Even though the president's allies are encouraging voters to write him in, Democrats are worried that he could be embarrassed by high turnout for Phillips or Williamson.
What does success look like for them? How are they defining that?
I would say that the Biden campaign is lowering expectations about what's going to happen here, but they're really just ignoring what's going to happen here.
Are they giving a number at all?
Well, privately, they'll point to the fact that there are so few precedents for this. They'll look at maybe Lisa Murkowski running as a write-in candidate, but that was a general election. You had a Democratic nominee, a Republican nominee, and a write-in. So there really is no blueprint. What would be, I think, the danger zone when you talk to Democrats here who've seen many, many, many primaries, they're nervous about this because of what happened in 1968. Lyndon Johnson did not put himself on the ballot. Eugene McCarthy got 40% of the vote. That was a surprising showing for a challenger. And even though Lyndon Johnson won the primary, he was out of the race 3 weeks later. And so when a lot of Democrats are nervous about President Biden, whether he's strong enough to lead the ticket again, a disappointing showing of less than 50% here might be a problem for the Biden campaign.
Less than 50.
Now, as I mentioned, Biden is even in danger of losing to Marianne Williamson.
If you look at the fact that he is the only sort of elected Democrat who's running, Marianne Williamson is also here in the state campaigning, I think he needs to finish ahead of her to be sure. And a lot of people here I've been talking to say she might actually beat him.
Now, both Williamson and Phillips made their final pitches to New Hampshire voters last night.
We're going to offer tuition-free college and tech school, Medicare for all, subsidized child care, tuition-free college, and a guaranteed living wage, a guaranteed sick pay. We're going to turn a war economy into a peace economy. We're going to turn the scourge of addiction into the gift of recovery. And we're going to turn a dirty economy into a clean economy. There has been a 50-year war on the middle class and the poor in the United States. I'm Marianne Williamson. We're going to end that war. I'm going to make sure of it.
So much work we have to do. We have to protect Social Security for those who are retired and have earned it. Not just protect it, but enhance it. So that's what America's all about. But are we going to be able to achieve any of these things with the dysfunction and, frankly, the current candidates at the top of the tickets? No. That's why I'm running for president. I know how to do this. I'm the second most bipartisan member of the entire U.S. Congress. I came from the business world, where you could never succeed by demeaning, endangering half of your customers. You actually do the opposite. You invite people, you listen to them, you learn them, you welcome them. That's what I'm going to do as president.
Now, that might be some of the first and only coverage you've seen of the Democratic primary candidates that are on the ballot in New Hampshire, because the Democratic Party and their media apparatus has been insisting that there's nothing to see here. There will be no primary. This is not the primary you were looking for.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible, especially given all the discernible, measurable frustration with Joe Biden in his own among his own voters. At the top, that doesn't exist. They said, well, he's entitled to it. He is an incumbent president. Of course, he's going to run for re-election. It should be his. Okay, let him fight for it and triumph easily. If there's no real dissent, then he can win. He'll have an easier time of it in theory, on paper, if their argument's correct, than he even did last time around when he won the nomination. But they don't even want to have that test. There's no reason for it. There's no reason to think it would make him a weaker or less effective candidate to get a little bit of practice going up against in a debate and in an actual measured election, going up against the people who oppose him, one from the left and one from kind of to a more centrist place, maybe you could argue, than him, and see how that shakes out. I think it would be a very healthy exercise to sharpen him a little bit. He's trying to run the same campaign he did in the midst of COVID, where he could just hide in the basement, and that worked because everyone was so scared and frustrated about the state of the world and a little fed up with Trump at the time. People seem less fed up with him now, what they're fed up with is Joe Biden.
And you're hearing even Dean Phillips express frustration. He was responding to reporters asking him what he thought were silly, goofy questions, and that's what provoked the blow-up, saying, hey, the only person who seems to be taking voters seriously, taking the idea that voters are demanding something of their politicians seriously, is in the next 10 over with Donald Trump. And I do think he's putting his finger on something there, which is that, hearing Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson just give those final pitches was a reminder to me that, oh gosh, I guess the Democratic Party does stand for a couple of things, but we haven't heard anything about those issues, whether it's kitchen table issues, whether it's protecting Social Security, which is a bipartisan issue at this point. All of these things down the line, we're getting no airing out of those priorities because there is no Democratic primary, and certainly those are not issues that are being discussed among Republicans. So Republicans are getting a free pass right now with this presumption that they must be with the people, with the majorities of Americans on some of these issues that they absolutely are not populist about, because Democrats have no venue, no opportunity, no platform to really say this is what we're getting out of our party. And that's the kind of information that comes out when you have a primary contest. And that's what Joe Biden is denying the public and, frankly, denying the Democratic Party by refusing to participate.
And everyone's letting him get away with that at the top. His people, think of Simone Sanders on MSNBC, all of the rest saying there will be no primary, definitively, endorsing this behavior. At the same time, they're saying that democracy itself is at stake. Trump represents the apotheosis of, did I use that word correctly? Apotheosis of democracy. Apotheosis, thank you. And that they can't, you can't, we won't have a country anymore unless he's defeated. And you can point to, non-democratic things he's doing as well. I wish he had participated in the debates. He said, I'm not going to participate in the debates. I absolutely refuse to. I think that would have been great.
New Hampshire of their first in the nation primary spot, which I think it's all silly. We should all have one voting day and get rid of all of this nonsense to begin with. Biden did.
Trump did that.
Sorry, but that's the point I'm trying to make, that Biden really just doesn't have any credibility when it comes to undemocratic maneuvers to try to ensure his place at the top of the Democratic Party ticket. I'm sorry, and New Hampshire voters, I know that they're not representative of all the voters in the country.
Well, they're more representative than Iowa voters.
Sure. But to do that in particular to them when they are this more kind of live free or die-ish kind of a state, more independent
My people are overrepresented in New Hampshire.
Right. I mean, it just really is a thumb in the eye of the public there. And I wonder if it will hurt him in the longer term. You heard, I thought it was so interesting to me to see that clip from MSNBC where you hear the pundit saying they're trying to lower expectations because there could be a very bad outcome for Biden in this state. Now, he doesn't have to lose for it to look bad and to create a media cycle where suddenly everyone's forced to pay attention to Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips. And this is not a state that has exactly thrown its arms around Biden in the past. In 2020, I will remind everyone every day until the day I die that Joe Biden came in 5th place in the Democratic primary.
Yeah. The question becomes, if his showing is really bad, does that create any pressure to, I don't think to change who the nominee is, but to have him participate in some future kind of debates or anything with the other candidates?
I mean, frankly, I'm doubtful, but I will say this. Marianne Williamson doesn't have the financial resources that Dean Phillips has as a multimillionaire, maybe even a billionaire. And Dean Phillips has pledged to stay into the convention. He's really playing the long game. Now, he could, be lying. I mean, people can change their minds or whatever. But what he has said is that he is basically going to sit there in the wings just in case.
They could make him an offer he can't refuse.
Things
like Secretary of Commerce or something.
Right. But I do think that the same way that people have these concerns about whether Trump is going to cross the finish line because of his legal woes, people do have ongoing and growing concerns about Joe Biden's health and cognitive fitness. And if those continue to germinate over the course of the summer, Dean Phillips wants to be in the position to say, hey, I'm ready to go. And an opportunity, some success in New Hampshire, getting a little bit more in front of the public, getting just a little bit of media attention could help set him up as a legitimate alternative for Joe Biden if he's unable to fulfill the job.
AOC was asked about who the backup choice might be. I think we're going to do a separate segment on that. So stay tuned. More Rising right after this.